Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
You guys, everything at Abercrombie is 25% off right now. I seriously can't remember the last time they had a sale this good. And if you're like me, your cart is about to turn into a massive haul. Use code SPOTIFYAF for an extra 15% off through March 31st, 2025. Valid in US and Canada. Excludes clearance and gift cards. See details online. 25% off everything is valid in US and Canada through March 31st, 2025. Excludes clearance and gift cards. Online price reflects discount.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central Pods. Cardiff beat the Lions on Friday night in a huge victory in the chase for the playoffs in the United Rugby Championship. It was battling, tackling and desperately hoping that Harry Millard's legs weren't buckling as he headed for that corner. We'll discuss the defence, Sheedy's performance, whether Big Al Lawrence is ready to step up at number 8 and Ted Davis's 150th appearance for the club. We'll look ahead to Benetton next week as we carry on the playoff run. And elsewhere, the Rags are back in action. Dragons officially start to become Cardiff Rugby thirds, and we'll answer listeners' questions.
You're listening to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Joining me on the pod this week, as always, Frazier, how are you?
Not bad, thank you, not bad.
Good stuff. Harley, welcome back after a few weeks off. The heart rate come down after the game on Friday and also a week at Butlins.
Yeah, I'll be honest, the game was far less stressful than dealing with a 2-year-old who suddenly decided she's Miss Independent, doesn't want to be in range, doesn't want to be in a pram, doesn't want to hold hands, and will just shoot off towards the nearest flashing light.
The only man with his feet up in that final few minutes at the Arms Park on Friday night. And Simon, welcome back to you as well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. All good, thanks.
Good stuff. So we'll start at the Arms Park on Friday night. Cardiff 2017 Lions, in a game that somewhat ebbed and flowed. Cardiff coming back after an early deficit, getting their noses in front and then desperately clinging on in a way that only Cardiff can do in that second half, with a man advantage and going from being in the corner to suddenly defending for our lives on our own line, whether there was some questionable referee in that or not. Fraser, coming to you first. Your general thoughts on the game?
I thought it was, personally, it was a pretty horrible game to watch. I didn't think it was very excellent rugby. I think it was quite sloppy from both teams. I think that, the first half, throughout most of the match, Lions had the ball for a majority of it. But they seemed, quite poor and one-dimensional in their attacking play, just kind of like one-up runners, forwards running into other forwards. We showed some pretty good physicality to kind of put up with that, and our defence was great throughout. I think we'll touch upon that later. But so the first half was getting a bit sloppy as time went on. We were still in the match. Our defence was good. Second half, I think that try, the intercept try from Millard that you referenced, like his legs were absolutely dying by the end, but he got over the line. That was massive because it felt at that point that the Lions were gaining a bit of momentum and ball started to get a bit quicker for them and they started to make yards. And then that intercept pass was really poor play by Lowe. Lowe had a good game otherwise, but it was like a weirdly bad pass. And it props to Millard for reading it and getting that intercept and getting over the line. And then Sheedy with a genuinely really good conversion. Again, we'll talk about it. He had a pretty quality game. We just hung on in there at the end, and it was kind of like asking the Lions to keep attacking. And to be fair, our defending was quality. We had good physicality and tackling. I think our back row was really solid. Belcher, Seb Davies, McNally all had a good game. Lilo was quality as well. And Mulder, I think another shout out to him. Keeps on playing well. But I was just impressed by our physicality, and it's a big result to win that, to hang on in there. If we'd lost that, it would have been absolutely just destructive for morale. But I think we did what we usually don't do, and that's hold out in the last, despite tempting fate over and over again. So I'm very happy with that result.
On Twitter after the game, Gareth McGivelray says great defensive effort. Tony says Johan Mulder boom after his huge tackle on the tight head prop, whose name, like Andrew last week, I shall not even get near attempting to pronounce. Harley, it was 241 tackles in the end, I think, come full time. You had some of the post contact meter stats and stuff as well. It was a big defensive effort, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was huge effort. So it was 200 in total there was about 250 tackles attempted. We only missed 19, which is, I mean, it did help that the Lions just were running straight. They weren't really trying anything around. Cardiff, I don't know whether it was on purpose or accidental, but they picked the perfect way to play against the Lions. So Lions thrive off counter transition, so getting the ball up off the deck or after a hit chase. And then he went and he'd go through. And so they go through and they don't want the ball. Cardiff just gave them the ball. So we had 36% possession over the whole game. And in that last 10 minutes, it was only 9. But that was part of it, just hammering down the line. In terms of contact meters, Cardiff were averaging 3.5 meters per carry, which is decent. It's not the best. Like they say, 4 is international standard. If you can average 4 meters after contact on every carry, you're going to cause problems. And we were just brutally efficient, especially when you look at our defensive performances at the start of the season and looked at that. It looked like those few weeks Jockey was away, Mellon really had them drilled. I think they were just doing nothing but drilling and defensive drills and one-up tackling the whole time.
Yeah, I think I tweeted after the game that Mellon will be somewhat pleased with that, but how that actually manifests itself out of Mellon, nobody really knows. He sort of just does a brief thumbs up on the way past, and everybody like stands up and applauds as the greatest defensive performance he's ever seen comes out. Simon, a couple of 3-word replies as well on that Friday after the game were, well, a bit contradictory. So Rob Hill says Sheedy kicked well. And then Andy Baker says De Beer not Sheedy, which is an interesting clash. And I thought generally it wasn't one for the attacking game, but other than the missed touch, I thought Sheedy's game management was pretty good on Friday. What do you make of him?
Yeah, I think it was. I think, the last few games, it feels like he's settling a little bit, which is strange because he's been here a while, but it just feels like he's getting a little bit more authoritative. Obviously there was the miss to the corner, which kind of puts a block on the copybook. But overall, I thought he had a good game. It pretty much, for me, it kind of summed up Cardiff's season. Of at times it felt like we were in control of that game, that we should be winning it a bit more comfortably, but we end up defending on our own line with a man up in the dying seconds. And I think if you could sum up this season, it would probably be this game. I think if you look at the celebrations at the end, you can see how much it meant to them as well. To take your point about if we'd lost that, how difficult that would have been to come back from. The roar that went up from the players themselves when that ball was held up over the line and the final whistle went, I think shows, they realised how important a game it was to put that distance between them and the Lions, but also, with other results across the weekend, and there were a few quite wacky results in terms of, scores across the weekend. I think it's really important going into a difficult away game next week. I think, special mention really for Cam Winnett for stepping. I think 2 players when he looked like he had his leg hanging off as well. I mean, we were he sort of hobbled back into the line, and then I think they kicked. Someone got it and gave it to him, and I was just like, you don't want that. And then he's through 2 players, and I'm assuming it was like extreme cramp or something. But we've seen Lilo do it on one leg and turn ball over, and see Cam do it. But I think it is that heart, that passion. Cardiff have had it at times, that bloody mindedness of you're not going to get over the line. But I think the Lions were unsurprisingly direct. Didn't look like other South African sides where you're kind of like worried that they're going to rip you apart in midfield with tricky runners and things like that. I think they were, their tries came from close range. Frustratingly, the setup for their second try was Gabe marking the ball in his 22 and then running outside his 22 to boot it away, and it's just kind of like I was right in line with it, and I'm like, he's just gone outside his 22. Now I know the officials are a bit iffy, but surely they're going to see that. So that kind of thing is frustrating because that's easily to take the heat out of the game at that point, to tap and pass it inside, or to take a few steps back. He's caught up in the heat at the moment, but it's frustrating sometimes that we allow teams to get into these positions, whether it's like piggybacking on penalties or making mistakes like that. And on piggybacking, it was great to see Ben Donald score and give Danny Southworth a piggyback over the line at the same time. Quite remarkable. But how often do we see Cardiff players taking those balls static at the line and trying to build momentum? It was really nice to see, coming in with a bit of pace, a bit of a runner in front, cut the ball back to him. Southworth basically on his back, but on his shoulder. And, that's what you want to see. Too often our runners sometimes are just like static and then trying to get over the game line. So, some positives, but at the end of the day, win's a win. Close the book, move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like that Ben Donald tried. Just those 4 phases of sort of looked like pre-called stuff. There wasn't any like off the cuff necessarily, but yeah, man coming short and Donald in behind. That's really good. And the other that win it step, just that whole passage of play where it ends up with Millard going in the corner then after probably the longest defensive set of the game. Well, I don't know if the camera showed it on television, but as Millard goes in the corner, the midfield where everybody's just letting run off looked a bit like the Somme, with just like sort of 6 or 7 Cardiff players hitting the deck immediately. There wasn't enough physios. Poor Gabe Hamer-Webb was stretching his hamstring out on the side. Nobody left to come and sort him out at all, so he was left to fend for himself. But yeah, it was there was some excellent passage of play in there, but certainly some moments where we could have cleaned up as well. Harley, and another player to pick out, Big Al Lawrence topped a lot of the stats. I think it was 29 tackles, 10 carries, the most carries for Cardiff, most tackles of anybody. He now tops the URC tackle stats, I think, as well. We discussed number 8 briefly on the pod last week, with Faletau potentially set to move on this summer, and whether we need to bring anyone in or not. Is he ready to go into next season as our first choice 8 if needed?
I definitely think so. I think he provides an awful lot of what we need in an 8. He's very good off the base. Even when scrum was creaking a bit, he was able to almost do the Faletau thing of get that ball out and make a positive carry out of that, even though the rest of the pack were going backwards. I said he's always just churning out performances. Look, I'm not saying he's going to be like he's due a Wales sort of quality, but as a solid club player, that talismanic figure who is just going to take the ball, run hard, and it gives the rest of the pack something to run off of as well. It's much easier if you're that second carrier if that first guy's made the dent in the defence, because you can come on. We're talking about we hate it when the players are static. Well, if you don't want to be static, you need to make that punch first up, and Big Al does that. Mad to think, he's playing Championship rugby towards the second half of last season. And now we sort of pulled him out because of our own injury crises and things. But yeah, keep him as long as we can. I mean, if we can do what we've done with Ray Lilo and Nick Williams in the past and run them into the ground, then great. I mean, as long as they're not too injured, they can't have a life after rugby. But if we can get every ounce out of them, that'd be great.
There's something of the Robin Copelands about him. I fancy is nothing, but week in, week out, you know exactly what you're going to get, and that is certainly a trait that we enjoy from particularly a big ball carrying forward at Cardiff. Fraser, then coming back to you, hopefully microphone woes aside. Seb Davis made his 150th appearance on Friday night. Big achievement for club. Nice to see his 2 kids go out onto the pitch with him. And I think for the first time I can remember in a long while when a player's had an individual milestone, we actually won the game as well on the night. He's rumoured to be off at the end of the season, heading across the Dragons, but he's been a great clubman over the last close to a decade now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he really has. Yeah, I hope my mic's working all right now. But he's been quality, and he's brilliant. He's had a brilliant career so far. Anyway, I think he's always one of those players who I've expected more from. He's incredibly good, and he's 150 appearances is an incredible milestone. He's played for Wales. I've always thought he could be even better. He's got the handling skills. He's a big guy. He can make yards when he needs to. The 50 minutes he played against the Lions on Friday, he was really good, putting in hard hits. running hard, he showed what he's got. So it is going to be sad to see him go. And he's not really called up for Wales a lot, so he's a good club player for Cardiff. Like, he would be there week in and week out, as he has done for a long time now. So I do feel it's a bit of a shame that he is going across to Newport. But yeah, I think he should be really proud of the career he's had at Cardiff, and yeah, I hope he is successful at Dragons. I don't want Dragons to be more successful than Cardiff, but I hope he does well for himself. Maybe gets back in the Wales team, possibly, if he shows himself to be playing well. I could see that happening maybe. So yeah, good for him. And yeah, shout out, thank you to the 150 games he's put in for us, and hopefully he can maybe leave on a high, us winning the European Cup at the end of the season, possibly. Don't know.
We'll see. Or even more importantly, the Welsh Hub Cup, of course, as I keep coming back.
Yeah,
that's when we all want to win. That moves on nicely to the news section then. We mentioned this at the end of the pod last week, but put it in the actual news section this week, as it happened sort of during the pod, that Taine Basham was announced by the club of a signing from the Dragons officially. No real surprises there, but good to have the official confirmation of it. Simon, you haven't had a chance to comment on that one yet. Taine Basham, a good signing for you?
Yeah, probably. I've got a few reservations.
Go on.
I think in terms of what the club's trying to do, he's the right age and he's Welsh qualified, and I understand that. I don't know what his best position is in terms of 6 or 7. It feels like one of those 6.5 type things that I don't know. I don't know whether it ever works out when a player kind of carries that kind of thing on their back. Yeah, I think I will need a little bit of convincing, but you wear blue and black, and there's plenty of, what do I know? There's plenty of, I'm just here on a pod talking about it. There's plenty of players that have, convinced me over time. But he's got that dynamism. He looks like a decent enough carrier. He's got quick feet. Does he add anything different to what we have? And if we kind of discuss it as maybe Tom Young going the other way with the age profile and stuff like that. He's not a Thomas Young type player necessarily. So what does that do to the balance of the back row? You've already got Jim Botham, who's pretty dynamic and good ball carrier. I just think it'd be interesting to see if Talupe goes as well. What does that back row balance look like? I thought Alex Mann looked good on Friday night as well. He's, I think everyone said he's really kind of bulked up over this season and looks much more physical than he did, last season. So, it's a pretty attritional position in that back row. I'm sure he'll get plenty of game time. Also, who comes in as Wales coach? Do they want that in their back row as well? So yeah, look, he can do it. He's proven that he can. I'm just a bit like, well, it doesn't like excite me hugely, I guess, compared to Thomas Young, who can just be absolutely incredible and with the pace to burn as well. So I think it just sets that question of what does our best back row look like for next season? Is it, and I don't think this is considered enough sometimes in rugby, is it a game by game choice? Is Dan Thomas going to have his contract extended? Don't think he's done anything wrong. Good experienced head around there. Where we want to be a bit more attritional, we could put those two in. Where we want to be a bit more, if we want to be a bit more expansive, what does it look like? So yeah, just a few questions about it, but I look forward to seeing him next season. I haven't mentioned that I think it's a Will Boyd. I didn't think much of Will Boyd before he came in, but I grew to love him in terms of the way in which he was turning ball over and the size of him as well. So yeah, good luck.
I still miss Will Boyd.
Yeah,
generally, I pine at the jersey I've got signed by him for like my 28th birthday, and just look at it and just weep a little bit and be like, I want him back. It's a meme here. I just want to add on. So for me, actually, I disagree. I don't think it's a choice between 6 and 7. I think for Basham, I think wondering whether he's a 7/8. But it depends then whether or not he's the 8 you want. And I think, as we were talking with Big Al, having just a big heavy duty ball carrier and makes tackles for days is what we want in our number 8. And I don't think Basham quite fits that. He is that explosive dynamic. He'd be brilliant off the base of scrums, I think, and first phase moves. My worry for him is one thing we do struggle at when we don't have Thomas Young in the team is turning ball over. And that's not his game either, really. With Basham, I don't think he's particularly good. And I think his ruck work is just one of my big problems with him. I mean, there's a perception of his discipline issues, which I don't think he necessarily gives away many penalties, but when he does, they're usually a monumentally thick one. I just think of like some of the games he's played against Cardiff. He's always good for one absolute moon howler of a penalty, which is either guaranteed 7-point try or he's off for 10. But I mean, if we can't have Thomas Young, having someone with plenty of experience is quite useful, particularly with we're still having question marks with William Bradley. Is he durable enough for pro rugby? I mean, he ends injury bouts. I mean, a nice if we can keep Dan Thomas for another season, I think that'd be great as well, because I think he just adds so much, particularly just the fact he can tackle for days. And again, that's something that, even if you can't get him over the breakdown, I mean, we seem to be getting our halfbacks to do that now. So with Johan Mulder being, a tackle and turnover king now. So, maybe we don't need the 7 to be the turnover guy when you've got the likes of Belcher and Ben Donald's pretty handy over the ball.
There might be a change in the style, that we'll see a change in the style next season, and it will be less reliant on that. Maybe, hopefully we won't be in as many defensive positions where how many times has Belcher or someone else just got over the ball and turned the ball over, within 5 meters of the try line. We can but hope that maybe we'll have more possession in a more positive area, and that's where he can. But I just think we need ball carriers. That's where we know we're weak, where we haven't been strong for a while. We need people with go forward. I think he can do that with his, stepping out of contact or changing the angle. But I'd worry if we see him as an 8, because I think I said it last time I was on, we need someone to lock the scrum that's enormous, basically, because our scrum can be on roller skates at times. So I don't know whether that is his position, but we'll see.
We had a few questions, and I think we're going to get these every week towards the end of the season now. But a question on Twitter from JHM saying, any news about a tight head signing? I think there was a question on Blue Sky as well about, are we going to sign anybody that isn't a back row, basically? And we sort of wait for news on that. I think all I would say is that generally the rumour mill focuses on Welsh-based players, as it's this less 6 degrees of separation and more 2 degrees of separation in South Wales. Everybody seems to know somebody, as evidenced by me stood next to Alex Mann's dad on the terrace on Friday night as well. So, but yeah, it's I think generally the club will probably look outside of Wales for a tight head and a second row, potentially a number 8, potentially a 13 as well. And so those are, with the way the market is now as well, I think those signings will come slightly later in the year and be less talked about before they're announced. But other bits of news, Cardiff have brought the visually impaired rugby back on a Wednesday night, 5:30 till 6:30 at the Arms Park. So if you're keen to get involved with that, it always looked well attended and a good initiative from the community rugby. And then one piece of news, signing or departure wise, Rags fly half Josh Thomas signed on a short-term deal to the end of the season for the Dragons last week. He played 9 games for the Rags in all competitions, scoring 48 points. He also turned out for the first in pre-season as well. Good player, will be a loss for the Rags, no doubt about that. But it does now mean, if I just go through the potential team the Dragons could put out, if you play Owain James slightly out of position at loose head, we're lacking a hooker, but then you've got Dylan Lewis, Matthew Screech, Shane Lewis-Hughes, Thomas Young. For the rest of the pack, I think we need one more back rower. Dane Blacker and Tina Stabia, 9 and 10, and then you could play Thomas at 15. We're very close to that elusive all ex-Cardiff 15 at the Dragons. So but they obviously have seen the success of the Rags and are looking to overtake them, but they will always have to settle for being the club's third 15, I think, rather than
fourth, isn't it? Because you've got Gloucester as well.
That's true, Gloucester as well. The arms keep spreading, having already conquered Aberavon and some clubs to the west. We now spread to the east and go over there as well. That leads me on to Rags Corner. They're back in action this weekend, head into Aberavon on Saturday afternoon, 2:30 kickoff. First of the final 4 regular league season games in the Super Rugby Cymru. They're currently top. Ebbw Vale are second, 5 points back. So their game in hand is over Aberavon as well. So if they win that with the massive 6 points, they could jump into top spot. But Cardiff have got 4 games left, 3 away, 1 home. Basically, I'm pretty sure mathematically that a home first round knockout game is secure, but I guess the thing is that the higher that you finish, the more likely you are to stay at home throughout the knockouts, as all 10 teams make that playoff. So it could go on for like 4 weeks. I've absolutely no idea what the format is. If you are aware of it, please do write in and let us know. We'll go on, Harley.
If I remember rightly, I think the top 6 sort of go through to a sort of quarter-final straight away, and then from 7 to 10, so 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9, they sort of have like a pseudo round of 16 to get the last 2 places to play, and they'll play, if I remember right, they play 1 and 2, so those 2 wins, and then 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, and then it goes up. So
I guess the highest,
I think effectively, yeah. So I think it's going to be one of those things. The higher you finish, I haven't seen anything about the final being like Principality or anything like that, so I'm guessing it'll be fairly similar to how the USE knockouts work. And basically, you just end up home games. Oh, you finish more home games.
Well, that's the target for the Rags anyway. Finish as high up as possible, stay as home as much as possible throughout the rest of the season. Should be a good game against Aberavon. Listener question from Charlie Hunt, who asks, what are your thoughts on Mackenzie Martin's potential development as a second row? He did start there for the Rags in their last game against Llandovery, a big win. Fraser, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this particularly. My feeling at that game was that it was purely sort of to counter Llandovery's massive scrum. But the suggestion post the game is that he seemed to go quite well there, and that it may have turned a few heads. Is that something you could see him slotting in there and filling a gap in the squad potentially for next season?
I'm not sure. I mean, I remember seeing him, and he is massive, and that's his like big what difference maker. He's a huge bloke, but I wanted him to be, and I think I've always wanted him to be, is that big ball carrying number. We were just talking about a lack of that in Wales in general, and in Cardiff, is having that like really huge person. If he runs into you, he's making forward gains, like regardless. And Mackenzie Martins, I want that kind of, for him to be that. So that's why I prefer him to be like a number 8 and like really focus on that position, because I think we are lacking in Cardiff and Wales with that. I mean, I'm sure he could make do it a second row, but I'm not sure it's an area that we really necessarily need at the moment. I'm not sure, and I think I think I'd stick with he's still young, trying to get him to hone his craft at number 8 and build into his body, get bigger. I think if you focus on that, I've got hopes for him. But, I'm not averse to him like slotting in if needed. But I think I'd stick with focusing on him on number 8 and building into that role, really.
Yeah, it's interesting having spoken about Seb earlier and how he maybe didn't quite reach his potential. And you wonder how much that whole pissing about moving him to 6 and 8 and stuff really impacted him, and whether Mackenzie Martin really needs this then at this stage of his career, bouncing between lock and 8. Just let him focus on one position for now. It's certainly a fair shout. Right, just at this point of the podcast, if you are enjoying what you're listening to, please feel free to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're enjoying us on, or if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe to the channel. Plenty of stuff always coming out with the wrap and the 4 club side podcasts. There's the URC Rewind. I think Lee's put a video out that he's after somebody from South Africa to join the URC Rewind, and there's always new pods and stuff that he's dreaming up in his podcast creation mind. Harley, is the women's one going every week at the moment during the Women's Six Nations?
I think the plan is going to be trying as hard as we can to do one every week. I need to message group chats as soon as we finish this call to sort of get pushed. So me and Hugh are sort of stepping back and letting the women take over now. So as it should be.
I look forward.
We'll still be involved because we enjoy it. In fact, I spent more time watching women's rugby this weekend than I did men's. So
I look forward to a 45-minute long run on what is a jump and what isn't a jump over a tackle after after what we've seen on the weekend.
The most angering thing the whole weekend. I don't care if Scotland had won it, but the fact that that was allowed, and it was the fact that, of course, it had to be against Scotland.
Yeah.
That it's just perfect sort of. Well, clearly it's one rule for Wales, one another for other teams.
Always fun in the world of rugby referee. And right, final part of the pod. Cardiff play Benetton this weekend out in Treviso. I actually did not look pre-pod. Does anyone know when this game is being played this weekend?
It's the 7:35 slot on Saturday.
There we go. Lovely. Thank you, Harley. So enjoy that one. I suspect we'll be on S4C if that's the case. That's usually the sort of...
Should be. I'll be honest, I didn't go as far as to checking that because I tend to go on, being England-based, I tend to just use my Premier subscription because I can just get it up on my Fire Stick. I don't have to mess around with where I live.
Fair. Well, yeah, we'll tweet out what is on and stuff later in the week. So keep across that. Simon, coming to you.
I have seen the referee though.
Yes, I have as well. Unfortunately, we'll not talk about that too much. Simon, coming to you on this one. I don't really know what to make of this game this weekend, to be honest, because a part of me thinks, pressure off now. We got the big win against the Lions. Sort of any points are good points, and then there's another part of me that thinks, no, keep the foot on the throttle. We can go there and win. Why not? What are you sort of hoping for, thinking about this weekend when it comes to the game against Benetton?
I mean, it's not a happy hunting ground for us, particularly, is it? We've had some pretty fearsome afternoons and evenings out in Treviso. I think I'm of the opinion that we go for it. I think we've got to back it up. For that result against the Lions, and psychologically, how many games were we eked out of last season in the last minute or by a point or 3 points to get over the line? Admittedly, I think we should have got over the line with a lot to spare, but to get over the line on that game, for that really to land psychologically, particularly when you see like the Ospreys are starting to pick up points as well, the teams around us starting to pick up points. I think going there, and it's going to be tough. I don't think they're as smooth as they were last season. I think they're a bit up and down, but it's always a difficult place to go. To go there and get a result would be huge. Then going into that Connaught game and into the Ospreys game, whether we can do anything, against the South African sides at the end, we want the pressure off for those games. So we're not relying on getting something necessarily out of those last two games. So I'd go for it. It's going to be tough, but I think if you're going to back up Friday night's performance, if we came away with a losing bonus point, I go, okay, fair enough. I wouldn't kind of be throwing my arms up in the air. I think if we lose heavily there or, don't come away with anything, it'll set us back a little bit. So I definitely go for it. I think you've got to, if you want to be in the playoffs, you've got to look at games like this. They're in the lower half of the table, although the table's incredibly tight. You've got to go, actually, we're going to go there and try and win this. Just 80 minutes of cutting out the silly errors, not giving away consecutive penalties, kicking to touch from inside your own 22 rather than outside. If we can cut that back, I think we've got a chance. I think it depends who's available, for the weekend. I don't think we had any particular injuries. I can't really remember on Friday night. So yeah, I'd go for it. I think we've got to. We've got nothing to lose.
Just to give some context on Benetton then, currently 10th, played 13, won 6, drew 1, lost 6, 32 points. So they're 3 points back from us in this remarkably close battle for the playoffs. And the URC put up a graphic today of who's in contention, who isn't. And Leinster were locked in, Dragons are well out of it. Everybody else can basically finish in the playoffs. Last week, Benetton scraped past Edinburgh in Treviso, 21-18. Benetton, who did bring pretty much all of their Italians back in. They had the likes of Menoncello, Brex, who else do they have there? Lamaro, Giuliani, Ferrari in the front row. Ruzza came on in the second row, and Edinburgh, who left most of their main Scottish guys at home. No Schumann, no Cherry, no Gilchrist, no Jamie Ritchie in the back row. They only just managed to beat them, so they might be smarting a bit from that. It'd be interesting to see whether they sort of throw their Italians then back into it again 2 weeks in a row, whether they maybe give them a bit of time off at some point this next few weeks. Fraser, sort of similar question, going over there. So what would you be happy with if somebody offered it to you right now?
I think I'd like echo what Simon said. And I think, like, yeah, if we got some losing bonus points, I wouldn't be like devastated. But I think we should still be going there to get the victory, because we got, Lions 13th and they're 5 points behind us. Like you said, it's really congested. It's like we're not, just because we got that win doesn't mean we can be like, yeah, all right. And then that assumes that we're going to go to, again, Ospreys, beat them on Judgment Day or whatever, and then beat Munster. And then Ospreys are obviously on really good form since Mike Jones has taken over. And then I think Munster beat Glasgow recently. They're doing pretty well. They're picking up a bit. And as you said, like, Benetton aren't doing great this season. They're a bit hit and miss. They've had some big losses against Ospreys, for example, and haven't been that brilliant. And like sneaking over the line against Edinburgh is not that impressive. So yeah, I'd want to go for a victory. I think, yeah, go for it. If we got a couple of losing bonus points, like maybe like a try and within 5 points kind of thing, I'd be happy with that. I think maybe one losing bonus point would be okay. But yeah, I think I'm of the opinion we go for the win. One of the things we need to sort out is kick receipt from, we are so shit at that. I don't understand why. But anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on it, I think, yeah.
Harley, I don't know how much you've seen of Benetton this season. They generally sort of the more physical of the two Italian teams, whereas Zebra are a bit more the expansive ones. But obviously they've got some extremely exciting backs there, where they've added the likes of Jacob Umanga. They've got Paolo Dogwu on the wing, Rhino Smith at a full back as well. They haven't clicked, though, for whatever reason this season. I think they were probably tipped to be more top four than battling for 8th spot ahead of the campaign. Is there any way we can get at them? What are we sort of expecting from them this weekend?
Yeah, I think you're right. Something has just not been working in it, and their head coach is leaving at the end of the season now, so I don't know how much there's a bit of apathy with that as well. But it's considering how it's reportedly be the second most expensively assembled squad in the URC. So that's just one thing to put out there, and we're sort of all four Welsh region joint, sort of like 40, that sort of, we're in that bottom end, and then I think it's Zebra, depending on who you ask, because they get a certain amount of money, and then the Lions. And you're looking at them and you go, well, they should be better than this. Like, they've got fantastic pack, so you wouldn't think we'd be able to get them at the scrum, but they do concede a fair few things there. They've got an absolutely fantastic, exciting backline. I do wonder sometimes if there's so many like wow star players, you haven't got that, a bit like the Ray Lilo, that nuts and bolts guy who's just going to knit it all together and just run straight and hard. I mean, Menincello and Brex are absolutely fantastic. They are possibly the best centre pairing in world rugby, up there. But as soon as you can do something to disconnect the 10 from them, or their outside backs, they sort of, they will cause you a lot of problems in defence. They're fantastic spot blitzers, and they're very good at knowing who's going to go up and go side to side. But I mean, I've been very unimpressed with Benton. I thought they were going to be a shoe-in for top 8, and now they're just looking like shit. And this is usually the period where they have a huge dip after the Italian Six Nations campaign, as they rest some players and so in and out. They've also got Champions Cup rugby, so they're in the round of 16. So it's how have they got one eye on that? Whereas I feel like for us, Challenge Cup run would be great, but I'd rather us, we're in a rare position where our fate is in our hands in the last handful of fixtures for the league, because we're playing all the other teams in contention, with the exception of the Bulls. I think it could be, I imagine after this next round, they're going to be locked in. I mean, I can't imagine them fucking up to Zebra. No offense to Zebra, but just no. as hilariously fun as your game against the Sharks was, you're not. I cannot see even Jake White half asleep messing that one up. Yeah, so I agree with Simon Fraser. I think we should be going all guns blazing. I think for me, 2 points is an absolute minimum, whether that's 2 losing bonus points or a draw. And we should be going as hard, and I think we should be going full noise. Let's go. Give the boys a couple of games. Just give them 2 or 3 games. And then maybe, with the sight of that, we're probably going to be sacking off that South Africa tour. So the less we need to do when we go to South Africa, the better. And just give the boys a big run. Tell all the boys, pretend you're all injured for the Japan tour. You don't need that negativity in your life. Just have the summer off.
It's a really important point, isn't it, Harley? They're coming out of a camp that, kind of maybe felt a bit more positive after the change in coach for Wales, but still at the back of that big defeat. You kind of you don't want Ben Thomas and Faletau going into that Connacht game, experienced as they both are, and I'm sure like mentally it won't necessarily phase them, but to go into that Connacht game and have that kind of washed out of your system because we've hit a good performance against Benetton, it feels like we're going. I think it's just really important to get some momentum going into that Connacht game, because I think Connacht are beatable. Absolutely, obviously it's one for next week's discussion, but we shouldn't go there thinking, God, this is a mountain to climb. We've just, we lost control against them at home, should have beaten them away during the Six Nations. So I think we always said that after Christmas was going to be the point at which you go, right, where are we really at? With a tough run. We've done the first step. Well, actually, the first couple of steps was getting the points out in Connacht and Leinster. We needed to win on Friday, and we did that. This is the next one. And I think, we need momentum going into that Connacht game in a couple of weeks. And I think, losing comfortably won't put us in the right place. So I agree with you, Harley. I'd get everyone back that's fit, throw everything at it, see what can happen. I forgot that they were still in the Champions Cup. I think that might well be on the mind to go, how far can we go there in terms of selection? So, I just think other teams are going to start picking up points, and we've got to try and pick them up as well.
The Benetton go to Castres the following week in their Champions Cup round of 16 games. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what team they put out, whether they rest a few with that in mind. For Cardiff, then we'll slide on to team selection. Have you mentioned it a bit? They've put out an Instagram video, so I've been stopping and starting all afternoon, picking out some features. First thing to say, Kieran Azarati is definitely unavailable this weekend. He's in Egypt, which isn't the best preparation to play Benetton generally. I have ensured that the Ginger Club sent him the reminder to wear Factor 50 at all times and search for all shade as well. So he should be good to go for Connacht on the back of that. But he's definitely unavailable. Other than that, a bit of positive news. Ali Davis was back in training and looking pretty sharp, so that bolsters the scrum half a bit. It also looks like that brings an end to Callum Brayley's time at the club. So his one substitute appearance, one try, is unbelievable try scoring record to minutes. It might go down in club history. That is a hell of a ratio. Talupa Faletau was doing some running by himself, which I suspect he probably does that quite a lot, because I suspect we manage his training week very, very carefully ahead of playing on the weekend. But Ben Thomas was back involved. And a lot of the under-20s lads were involved in training as well. Steph Emanuel, Tom Bowen, Sean Davis and Elijah Evans are spotted out there. The only sort of bad news, I think, was that Simon, you saw Mason Grady, didn't you, at the game on Friday in a protective boot?
Yeah, he was on crutches and in a protective boot up at the back of the stand. So I couldn't remember what his original injury was, and whether that was just a precaution. Or whether that's something new or a setback but I would have thought he would have, from what we spoke about last time, we were expecting him back around this time.
So it was his ankle injury that he suffered for Wales in the Autumn International, but he was slated to be back late Feb, early March initially. So I suspect if he's still in a protective boot and on crutches, that's not a great sign. Maybe not a great sign for the rest of the season. The other bad sign was that Ed Byrne was signing autographs in the pack bar. He was also in a protective boot. He's on
crutches too.
And he was due to be back around this time as well. So seems like those two have either had fresh injuries or setback in their original injuries. No sign of Jacob Beetham out in this training video either. So he seems like mind, but certainly more selection decisions to be made this season for both our selection and maybe slightly more importantly jockeys, but only slightly. We'll start at loose head. Fraser, I penciled in Domachowski to definitely start and Southworth on the bench last week. Jockey then absolutely done me by switching him around in his team selection. It seemed to work quite well with Doma coming on and a sort of a bit of a bomb squad-esque. But is there an argument to go with the big hitters from the start this week, or did it work so well you leave it as it is?
I think probably go for the big hitters from the start this time. I don't know. I think Domachowski, get him on straight away. Give him 50 minutes. So I guess maybe against the Lions, it was with a fear of like the forward pack, kind of who they were bringing on the big South Africans. And I mean, Benetton have a good pack, but I guess they're not a South African team. Just want to shout out to Azarate going to Egypt because everyone seems to go to Dubai. So fair play for him for choosing a different country to go to. Good for him. Yeah, I'd go for Domachowski, I think, to start, and then Southworth on the bench. Yeah.
If you're listening from the Visit Egypt Tourist Board, we are open to sponsorship. Middle East is a little bit dodgy, but I'll take Egypt. Rather than no sports washing there. I've penned Belcher in at hooker just because he seems to be, along with McNally and Lilo, sort of just there now. Like his big 75 minutes, he looked absolutely done for coming off on Friday, but we'll wind him up and go again on Saturday, no doubt. And then Litterick, likely to start a tight head unless there's any sort of obvious. I suspect he might be doing 80 minutes again if he fancies it. So McNally and Teddy then in the second row. Teddy, who was in the training ones, he hasn't been allowed to go on holiday like Azza has. So I suspect we'll see him come straight back in because I thought he was brilliant off the bench on Friday night. Back row then, Harley. There's obviously Faletau to come back in there potentially somewhere. There's Donald and Mann at 6. Mann obviously got the nod at 7 last week, which we weren't expecting. But there's Young and Dan Thomas there. It's quite a good battle at the moment there, that back row, isn't it? Who are you fancying this weekend?
I know, who'd have thought of it? Cardiff having selection headaches in the back row. For me, I think Donald's picked up where he left off after his injury. I'd keep running him at 6. Mann's not doing anything wrong. I just don't think he's a 7. So I'd like to see. I'd probably like to see Dan Thomas cut or top. Well, again, horses for courses. Depends whether or not we want to try and pilfer a bit more ball. But I just like Dan Thomas's secured thing, and then bring Thomas Young off the bench because he just seems to be absolutely thriving in that bench role, coming in the number 21 jersey. Just go and wreak havoc for a bit, run around against tired legs. I go with that. If Faletau's coming in, I'd give him the start. I've made my feelings about him being a bench option player. I just don't think it works for him. I think he's just one of those players who needs to warm up with the game. You can't just drop him in mid fray. And so I'd go with that, and then sort of hinting on my bench. I'll probably have Big Al, and I'll be looking at Big Al covering 8 and 8-6, maybe second row, an extra emergency second row, and then I'd have Thomas Young then. So there's my 20 and 21.
Any alternative opinions on that? Or,
I just think it's thinking where Jim Botham fits with.
Yes, I didn't even mention him,
and I think that's and it just shows the depth that we've got just in terms of. He didn't play much for Wales at all. No, he did. He did play one of the games.
Played the first 2 rounds, didn't he?
First 2 rounds. So he hasn't played for a good few weeks since then. So I think throwing him in to start. But I think there is something about Donald's versatility to be able to go up into second row as well, which is, maybe it's that kind of comes back to that Mackenzie Martin conversation as well of having a second thread to your bow is not a bad thing for a player. But I think Botham's been so important for us in terms of his turnovers, his carrying. It's difficult not to see past him, but again, it's a really tight one. Do you leave Big Al out and go, actually both of you cover 6 and 7 because you cover 6 and 8 because that's what we're going to need it's a really tricky one. I think whoever's selected is fine in a way. And I just say, just on the front row, what a good job they did, that starting front row, because, you know, that tight head was enormous. I mean, no one was stopping him from that distance, was he? Maybe Johan Mulder could have stopped him from that distance with the right angle but with the gravitational pull of that end of the ground, as we saw with Harry Millard, you know, it's very difficult. So, but, you know, to then bring on Domachowski, and as soon as their front row changed, we started to get a bit of an upper hand. You know, we almost had to see out 50 minutes, 60 minutes for their first choice. So, yeah, I think whoever you pick, but it's going to be hard on those that aren't there, because they're quality players, you know. I think both of them are really quality player.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's mad that you got Ben Donald, Dan Thomas, Talupi Faletau, Alex Mann, Thomas Young, Alan Lawrence, and James Botham, and probably two of those are not even going to make the 23. When, I don't envy Jockey and Co on that one at all, because it's like you said, it's no bad option, but there's also no right decision there either. You know, no matter what you pick, there'll be somebody disagreeing with you. Fraser, any back row thoughts?
No, I think, like you say, it's kind of horses for courses. They're all kind of like quality players. There's not like a huge drop down depending on who you pick. And yeah, like you said, there's going to be a couple of players who might not even make the like subs, who have been brilliant and they don't deserve. It's like none of them deserve to be dropped in any way. So it's a really cruel decision making headache to have. I feel bad for whoever, you know, gets the chop out of all those players, because they've all worked so hard and all quality. I guess it depends on, if we do 5-3 bench or 6-2 and how we're looking at playing. I don't know, it's tricky. I'm not a coach for various reasons, but that is one of them, that I wouldn't want to let anyone down. So I'll just playing like 18 people on the side and hope the referee doesn't notice. But
Simon, coming back to you, Ben Bryan on Twitter asks, would you consider Mulder to be our number one scrum half now? We mentioned it briefly on last week's pod, but with Ali Davis now back and Ellis Bevan presumably still fit, although I didn't see him in the video, but imagine he's around somewhere. We've got three good scrum halves there, three very different scrum halves as well. But Mulder noticeably stayed on for the full 80 on Friday night. There was no bringing Bevan on. On Ben's question, is he our number one now?
He's taking his chance, hasn't he? I mean, it's difficult to drop him, to go, you know, we're going to go back to Ali Davis or Bevan. So you kind of go, well, you've got the shirt, you know, you keep it. I think they all bring slightly different things. I think with Bevan, you know, I'd really like to see him challenge the line a bit more, with, you know, around the fringes. I think he's physical enough to do it, but it's just not quite there in his game yet. But, you know, he's young still. So yeah, I'd be tempted to keep him, depending on. But I think, you know, what we don't know is, you know, all the kind of analytics that go on in the background in terms of fitness levels, and, you know, I'll put players in the red zone in terms of how much they've played and stuff like that. And I think that will come into play with the back row as well, in terms of those. You know, it's a hell of a shift on Friday night. You know, not a kind of under 20s versus England defensive shift, but plenty of big hits going in. And you know, you're going to need all those players for the run-in. So is it kind of like, well, actually, look, we're going to rest you this week because you had a big shift last week emotionally and physically. So, but yeah, I'd keep him at scrum half, to be honest. I don't think he's done anything wrong. And then maybe if Ali Davis is fit, have him on the bench to come and kind of tighten the game up. That's what we had brought Sheedy and Ali Davis in to do, really, was to kind of tighten up those games where it's close and try and get us over the line. So, you know, that's what I do.
I disagree with that. Backline then still continues to largely pick itself. I think Sheedy will stay at 10. Ben Thomas comes in at 12. Struman, he is, as he appeared to be in training. Lilo stays at 13, and then Cam Winnett was in the training video, looked to have shaken off whatever that leg issue was in the second half on Friday night. So we assume he stays at 15. Wing then Harley, with Tom Bowen back in there, and I think a genuine consideration after his form pre-20s and then for the 20s as well. Got Gabe Hamer-Webb, Regan Grace is still fit, and Harry Millard there. Interesting question that came up on Twitter last week a bit just before picking it was, is Regan Grace big enough to be Jockey's physical right winger, or is he just too sort of injury prone, and is that Gabe Hamer-Webb's for the moment whilst Adams is injured?
I think it kind of has to be because we don't know with Regan Grace. That I think that's the biggest problem with him is we just don't know. And I don't know if he's been fit. If he's been fit enough to even give it a try. I mean, I don't see the harm. I mean, I can imagine him maybe getting a bit more. Maybe giving him some time out in South Africa. I know they're harder pitches, but they're fast pitches, which give him a chance to show what he can do. On the other wing, I mean, so talking with Hugh Griffin from his various own podcast and the other Rap Family stuff, and he was asking me, and he asked me two he asked me the same question about two different players, and it was, is Harry Millard any good? And is Johan Mulder any good? And I was basically turned around and went, well, Johan Mulder, he started off really ropey in like Northern Hemisphere scrum half stuff, but you could see his physicality and his attacking plays great, and he's improving game on game. Great. Harry Millard for me is the epitome of a good club player. He is never going to be an international. Like you can see, look at him. He's not. You're never going to think, oh, he's definitely going to have a world score. But he never lets the side down, and and his try scoring record at the moment is brilliant. He's 7 from 8 or something like that. And when he's on form like that, and he's doing that with basically strapped to the I honestly thought he was going to stop dead during that intercept drive, just because you could just see his knees starting to seize up again, and you're just like, oh, please, just get to the try line, and then if you have to go off and Bevan has to go on the wing, that's fine. Just make it. But I mean, Bowen showed for the under-20s just how exciting the player is. I don't think he's a fullback. Just seeing that England game, I mean, as exciting as that was, just let's know, and even less a scrum half. But I mean, it'd be great to see him on the bench. But I think if you're going to put him on the bench, you are probably pushing more towards a 5-3. I'd be more inclined to have, say, Millard. I mean, you could start Bowen and have Millard on the bench, and then you've got your centre cover sort of working that way. But yeah, for me, I think Gabe, even though he probably unfortunately, I think it was probably one of his worst performances for Cardiff, but I know he's got better in him. Yeah. And I'd be tempted and Jockey's the sort of coach who'll just sort of say, look, forget that, we know what you can do, but just try again. He's not the sort of coach who'll drop a player for a bad performance. So yeah, I'd probably keep that. And I said, bringing Bowen in just to have some more pace, give Millard a bench spot, and you're pretty well covered with Ben Thomas covering 10, 12, and do 15 at a push, I'd say. But that wouldn't involve having it to go to the wing at some point.
I think, weird as this sounds, the weather's going to play a factor as well, because if you can get a dry, when it rains in Treviso, that pitch gets pretty heavy. And Tom Bowen on that pitch is, it's not going to play to his strengths. And if it turns into an arm wrestle, if it's kind of dry and hard, then no, absolutely, and it may well be looking at that a little bit. Not that I'm saying that they kind of look to the skies and everything, but I think you've got to think about what type of game they're going to play, and if it's wet and heavy, and I just feel you're going to need bigger players out there, maybe.
To bring you the live weather forecast, Treviso it's dry all week. There's a little bit of drizzle sort of overnight Friday into Saturday, and it's dry again on Friday night for the game. So I suspect it'll be closer towards harder and faster than the sometimes bog that we do experience over there. When typically when we go Six Nations time, I think we end up in February there getting stuck in the mud quite a lot there, don't we? So, bench wise then, so replacement front row, no sign of Evan Lloyd in the video this week. He wasn't a travelling reserve on Friday either. Dav Hughes was the travelling reserve hooker. So with that in mind, it's gone Southworth, Evan Daniel and Will Davis King as your replacement front row. And then I think I generally agreed on a 6-2 probably, that he'll stick with that, and with Ali Davis and Harry Millard as your outside back options then if Bowen starts on the left wing. The question then, I guess, Fraser, is do you put like a Seb or a Thornton as your second row cover, or do you use Donnell as your second row cover and then can put 3 back rowers on the bench then in sort of you could get sort of 3 from Mann, Botham, Young and Lawrence on there?
I would probably go for a like proper second row cover in probably, I mean, Seb Davis had a really good game, so I'd probably put him on the bench there. And then you've got the option of, probably, I mean, it's tricky to pick who have we selected for our first choice back row.
So we've got Donald, Dan Thomas and Faletau in there at the moment. So you've got 2 from Mann, Botham, Young and Lawrence to come onto the bench then.
From Young and Lawrence. I think Young and I think Big Al not understand. Yeah, it's a real shame. I think Big Al maybe deserves a rest. I think he's played a lot this season, so maybe he's in the red zone in inverted commas. So like maybe he can stay at home and just put his feet up a bit. He worked really hard against the Lions. So I'd probably go Thomas Young and Botham then, and Botham's like quite flexible in where he can play as well. I know Thomas Young's just brilliant off the bench, rapid. So I'd probably go for those 2, and then Sam Davis as a second row cover.
Good stuff. So the team as we've selected it, going from 1 to 15, Corey Domachowski, Liam Belcher, Reece Littrick up front, Josh McNally and Teddy Williams in the second row with Ben Donald, Dan Thomas and Talupe Faletau in the back row. Johan Mulder and Callum Sheedy are the half-backs, Ben Thomas and Ray Lilo in the centres, and then Tom Bowen, Gabe Himmer-Webb and Cam Winnett in the back 3. Evan Daniel, Danny Southworth and Will Davis-King the replacement front row, Seb Davis, James Botham and Thomas Young are the other 3 of the 6-2. And then the backs on the bench, Aled Davis and Harry Millard. A good team that, I think. One that I think has certainly got a good enough chance of winning out there. Any sort of last thoughts from anybody on the game itself or that team?
I was just going to say, I think Evan Lloyd, he's been through a lot recently. I was thinking like he would just started for Cardiff and he's thrown into the Wales team and he's all like caught up in that storm with Gatland and like, why is he there? So I think he might just need a bit of time out. Maybe he's not injured, just to like recalibrate. It must have been a mad couple of months for him. So I did feel a bit for him, and just he probably got a lot of stick on social media for like who is he, why is he there, and all this kind of stuff. So I think maybe it deserves a bit of a break, and maybe that's it. And he'll be back in the coming weeks. That's what I was going to add.
Yeah, just to sort of jump on that, it might be worth for him to just almost follow with Mackenzie Martin, focus on the Rags for these last few games. Yeah, I know they're not massively short in that department, but just having a bit of time at Super Rugby currently, which is really the level they were planning on having him at this the last season before he got dragged up to Wales last year, and just let him have some confidence, build work on his arrows, just throw in and just out of the limelight a bit. I mean, I know we've been getting plenty of messages like, "Oh, why is Mackenzie Martin not playing for Cardiff?" Because he wants to focus on the Rags, so he can actually develop himself as a player, which is fair enough. It's all well and good throwing these young players in, but when they're not the finished articles, you end up with players like Jamie Roberts who can't pass the ball, but can run. They can run very hard in a straight line, but they can't do anything because they haven't had the chance to work and develop on those skills when they probably should have.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, gents. Thank you, Fraser. Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Simon, for joining us this week. We'll be back next week looking back at Benetton, looking ahead at Connacht. There'll be rag stuff and hopefully a bit more news coming out as well. We keep having lots of questions about the squad for next season. We are planning on doing a sort of squad building episode when there's a week off. Fingers crossed we don't actually have a week off because we just storm all the way to the Challenge Cup final. But until then, continue sending your questions in. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
That was the Cardiff Central Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
O'Reilly. Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.